Hello, I'm Roslyn Nieves. Welcome to Queen's Perspectives. March is Women's History Month, and it's a time where people get together to honor and celebrate the struggles and achievements of American women throughout the history of the United States. American women have fought the hard fight to gain rights, not simply for themselves, but for many other underrepresented and disenfranchised groups in America. Women's History Month is also a time to reflect on trailblazing women who have broken barriers and lead the charge for change for the rest of us. Today we celebrate Congresswoman Meng. She is the first and only Asian American member of Congress from New York State and the first female Congress member from Queens since former vice presidential nominee Geraldine Ferraro. Congresswoman Meng, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Well, listen, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan into law on March 11th. It's $1.9 trillion. How exciting is it to see the fruits of your labor come to fruition?
Well, thank you for bringing up this incredible legislation that so many, especially here in New York, have been waiting for. We know as we celebrate Women's History Month that so many women and moms and caregivers have been disproportionately impacted during this COVID-19 pandemic. And we also know that here in Queens, New York, we were very early on at the epicenter of this international health crisis. And so we are thrilled to be able to get this legislation signed into law. And it is largely due to the efforts of everyday viewers like the ones here today who have weighed in telling us what government and what Congress needed to do to help them.
I agree. Break down a few of the benefits of the relief package.
So one of my favorite parts of this bill is how much it helps our families, our working families. It infuses about $40 billion into our childcare industry, literally helping to lift so many children and families out of poverty with initiatives like expanding the child tax credit. Families will receive thousands more than in previous years. And this is because so many families have weighed in saying how much they need help. We also know how much our small businesses, especially our restaurants, have suffered. We are expanding our small business help program. We're making sure that more businesses, more minority and women-owned businesses can apply. We also have a new grant, not even a loan, they don't have to pay it back, $28 billion for restaurants, and not the big chain ones, the small mom and pop ones that we like to go to. $28 billion in grant money where restaurants could apply, anything to help them thrive and to survive, especially as a lot of restaurants are using extra expenses, to help keep their customers secure, from ventilation to plexiglass, outdoor seating capabilities, you name it. It also provides help with rent and with mortgages. And another favorite part of this bill is that it helps families, especially our students, access the internet. Did you know that 16 million kids right now across the country are not able to access the internet? They're not able to attend school remotely and to do their homework. Our kids have missed out on a year's worth of education. So those are some of my favorite parts and highlights of the American Rescue Plan.
I tell you, it's so beautiful. People were calling me, oh my God, it's signed. They're so excited. You walk by, you see all these stores that were closing or closed temporarily. Now they can reopen. There's help and there's relief. There's something in it for everyone almost. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. I forgot actually a lot of people's favorite part, the stimulus check.
Yes.
Someone just texted me saying thank you for the stimulus check. And so, this is $1,400 The previous administration only gave 600, and Joe Biden knew that 600 was not enough, so he added 1,400, and now people have $2,000 in their pockets, and also extending unemployment benefits from 50 weeks to the 79 weeks in September, which hopefully we will be able to help open up our economy again.
Well, we're resilient. We will definitely get back to where we were before the pandemic. I'm definitely confident of that. Let's talk about some of your other notable accomplishments. Your resolution to denounce anti-Asian hate related to COVID-19 and what it took to get it passed.
Sure. Well, it was actually about a year ago when I wrote this legislation. It was really, before COVID had actually hit us here in New York, we were already seeing a lot of, hateful incidents and assaults that really were stemming from a fear, from, lack of knowledge about the virus. People were looking for a scapegoat. And certainly the words of our former president calling it Kung flu and the Chinese virus did not help and really worsened the situation. And so I wrote this resolution. It was really a symbolic way for Congress to stand up and to say that they condemn this sort of bigotry. So we were really proud that it was passed last year in September. And then President Biden actually signed an executive memorandum that had that same language in it.
Excellent, excellent. And you had to, he just recently did that, but you also had to reintroduce it again because of the fact that these things didn't stop, and then Biden got involved. Am I correct?
Definitely. I mean, when I first introduced it, I really thought, okay, it's important for Congress to take this symbolic stance. I didn't fully realize and expect that we would be still experiencing these sorts of incidents 1 year later. And as we saw in Atlanta, people have literally been hunted and killed because of what they look like. And so obviously the fear is not over. The hateful incidents and hate crimes are still happening across the country. And so we actually need to do more.
And it's crazy, and it continues to spike from little incidents to huge where they're murdering people. Where did this craziness, I know it did start with the rhetoric of the administration, but where do we go from here? I mean, what will stop this from happening? This is insane. It's a crime against all of us. When it happens to one of us, it's a crime against all of us. How do we stop it? Where do we go from here?
Well, definitely, in this country, there is a history of hateful incidents and hateful laws being passed, stemming out of fear and out of ignorance. We saw legislation in this country like the Chinese Exclusion Act. We saw Japanese Americans being locked up in incarceration camps. We saw the Muslim ban. And now, we are seeing these types of incidents. What I will say, and I'm so thankful because after Atlanta, so many people from way beyond the Asian American community have reached out. And while it is a very hurtful time for our community, I feel really hopeful. I feel that the hurt and the pain of the Asian American community is finally being seen and heard. And we're having some really important, sometimes uncomfortable conversations between the Asian American community and other communities as well. A young activist said recently, and I remember her words so clearly, that about how important it is not to point fingers at each other. She said the answer to racism is never more racism. It is solidarity. And I think that in the weeks and the months ahead, we will find increased opportunities for communities to work together and to mutually understand each other's history and future path together in a much more effective way. So I'm very hopeful. We continue to work on legislation in Congress so we have more resources to deal with these sorts of, hate incidents, but more education about our history and, about COVID in general, to make sure that there isn't false news coming out like there was in the past is so crucial.
Okay, I agree with you 100%. I read that you, along with Representative Quigley and Fitzpatrick, just introduced a resolution affirming U.S. support of the Global Partnership for Education. Tell us about that.
Well, education is so important. I sit on the subcommittee that deals with foreign aid to all of our other nations around the world. And I believe that diplomacy is important. I believe that it is important to use the tools and the resources that we have as Americans to be able to create environments where especially our young people have the opportunity to study, to get an education, to propel democracy and to become the leaders that they're destined to be.
I agree. It's wonderful and it's supported greatly. So congratulations on that. So my next question, 530,000 COVID deaths with 33 million people vaccinated. And it's expected that every adult will be eligible by May 1st, 2021. What are your thoughts on access to the vaccine?
It is an issue we've had in Queens and here in New York. For example, March 17th is the day where so many people were excited about because they finally became eligible. But then at this very same time, on the same day, they realized that there weren't necessarily more vaccines for them to actually access. And so eligibility without sufficient access is not that meaningful. I will say that another great part of the bill that President Biden signed, the American Rescue Plan, has money for vaccines. It has money for outreach into communities who might feel hesitant to get the vaccine. We are also trying to work with the Biden administration to get these vaccines into the offices of our local doctors, local physicians, local community health centers, where people might feel more comfortable and actually, closer distance even in many cases to be able to access the vaccine. But hopefully soon, President Biden says that by May, people who are eligible will be able to receive it.
Don't go away. We'll be right back after this brief message.
We're here in the South Bronx at Children's Health Fund's very first program site, and we're here to celebrate this new partnership and to have a look at the services being provided. Our mission is really very simple. We want to ensure the highest quality healthcare reaches children living in poverty. Access to healthcare is what we do, and we go the extra mile to make sure it happens. And going the extra mile means that we bring our mobile clinics right to where kids live, where they learn, where they play, and we do that in a very community integrated and oriented way.
This is actually a room where the patients are screened by the providers. You could talk to the doctor about various conditions or what it is exactly that you need, just like you would do at your regular physical. The doctor can order certain blood tests to be done from here. They can order certain screenings. They can order referrals for the patient to see specialists if they needed to. They can also order nutrition, mental health, whatever it is that the patient needs, just like at a regular physician's office.
We do more than just medical care. So when we talk about comprehensive services, we obviously have providers, nurse practitioners, and doctors doing basic primary care, but so often a patient comes in complaining about one issue, and then we find out there's so many other issues. So we really see ourselves as kind of a one-stop shopping to really help this family succeed.
Innovation at Children's Health Fund started from day one. We were the pioneers of the medical home house call, and this partnership with Henry Schein is going to continue that innovation. Together, creative problem solving, getting to places where we couldn't go alone, getting there together, and making sure kids have access to high quality care that they need. That's really where we're going together.
Henry Schein is really helping help happen by delivering products and services and solutions that providers need throughout the U.S. every single day. Children's Health Fund and their IDN affiliates are helping help happen by delivering care to the most needy of population. So we're both delivering. One's delivering products and the other one's delivering care.
To see the partnership come together, the strategies that we've worked on over the last year, culminate to this morning, and getting a chance to walk on the mobile clinic and get a tour of it and find out that it actually has some of the services that a primary care physician's office has. And so to know that that level of care is going to go to the underserved, and specifically in this area to children in need, is just a fantastic time for both organizations.
When I look to the future, I see a future together with Henry Schein and Children's Health Fund. We took a while to get to this point. We've worked together, we've ideated together, we've created together. And from this foundation, the future is very bright. I can see us reaching more kids with more services in more places, not only over the next 4 years, but maybe the next 40.
Welcome back to Queen's Perspectives. Thank you so much for joining me as we spotlight Congresswoman Meng for Women's History Month. Now, we spoke about your accomplishments in Congress. I want to switch up the conversation. Women's History Month is also about helping girls and young women aspire to reach their dreams. When did you know you wanted a career in politics?
I didn't know. I did not grow up knowing many politicians or even leaders in any field who looked like me, right? There weren't a lot of people of color. There weren't a lot of women that I knew who were elected officials. So I never ever dreamed that I would actually run for office. I will say that personality-wise, I was a really shy kid. Never spoke up in class, never raised my hands. I would try to crawl in a hole in a classroom if I could when the teacher called on me. And obviously, I'm in politics now. And I will say that growing up, when I was in college and in law school, I had many internships in various government offices, the state level and the federal level. And I thought, wow, this is a fascinating place to be. There aren't many people who look like me. And I wanted to be where all the action was happening. Again, didn't think I would run for office, but I just wanted to be in those rooms where people were talking about policy and legislation. I thought it was really cool. So, I never took a political science class, never ran for student government even.
Wow.
But so, I talk to high school students and I tell them that, they have more experience than I did. So you never know what's going to happen. But I really realized that, volunteering in the community, that politics can be a very effective way of helping people and helping a lot of people at once when it's used correctly.
I agree. And also internships, they help people to focus on what they like and what they don't like.
Exactly. There's no better way to sort of get a feel of what you might want to do for your career or not do, right? Get
Definitely.
A sense of what you're good at, where your skills are needed.
Definitely. How did you feel when you first won your race in the assembly?
Oh gosh, it was really intimidating. I ran against the local Democratic establishment. I didn't know anything about politics. I hadn't barely been to any Democratic meeting or anything like that before. But I really felt like I was carrying the strength and the voices of people in my community. You know, whether it was the senior citizens, whether it was the minority communities who felt like their voices weren't being represented, whether it was my friends at our local public housing complex who had to wait weeks just for hot water or heat. You know, these were just some really basic issues that I thought that needed a stronger voice in government to advocate for them. They were asking for things that shouldn't be a luxury, or you know, it was a right of theirs, and I felt that I had to do my small part to carry their voices into the halls of government.
I agree. Then you pivoted and ran for the 6th congressional seat and won. What did your family say when you became the first Asian American woman in Congress?
So that was unexpected too. Clearly, I don't plan very well in life. I was in the assembly. I just had my first baby.
Wow.
My former congressman who I succeeded, Gary Ackerman, announced he was retiring. I spent a few hours calling people, asking them if they wanted to run. And at one point, my husband turned to me and said, "Why don't you do it?" And I said, "You're crazy. I just had a baby." You know, really was not the best choice for me, I thought at the time. But, you know, within 24 hours,
Wow.
after talking to a few folks in the community, I decided to do it. But I had to do it in a very short period of time, to make my decision. And so, you know, thankful for the community for helping.
And you know what? When you're asking somebody else something, maybe it's meant for you, and that's what they were saying. Well, your husband, why don't you run? You know,
yeah.
why don't you do it?
Right. Women never look at ourselves. We always think that we might not be as qualified.
It's so true, and that's why we have to do shows like this. So let's talk about some of your mentors. Who were your role models?
That was one of the hardest questions when I first got elected. I felt like so many of my colleagues had role models, or they knew people in their lives who were judges, who were elected officials, or they grew up talking about, you know, some American elected official. And I really had none of that. So when people ask me who my political mentor is, who my rabbi was, I actually say it's my grandma, my mom's mom, my maternal grandma. She was the first one in our family to come to this country. She came alone, left all her family behind, and worked as a housekeeper for a super wealthy but very nice couple in Manhattan. And they really took her under her wing. And so even though she's the first immigrant from our family, you know, like, she makes the best cookies, American cookies, that any Chinese immigrant could make. And she always encourages me. You know, she doesn't really have an education, obviously never ran for office, but she gives me really good advice about being a good listener, you know, being responsive to people. And those skills that she's taught me, never learned in a classroom, but have been so helpful to me in my career.
Your grandmother, that's wonderful. She paved the way for you.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
When you think of a few women that put their stamp on history, who do you think of?
I don't know if I think of specific people. I just feel like there are so many women who have done the hard work, have paved the way, that they don't get much notice, right? They don't get much recognition. And it's so hard. And what I think of is that, you know, when I'm talking to younger women or women who are thinking about going into politics or whatever field, I tell them that about the importance of feeling confident that our stories, our backgrounds, our family's history are not like other people's. And I think I spent so much of my, younger adulthood trying to fit in and trying to be like other people, oftentimes men, and kept feeling like I was falling short. And so I finally, at some point in my adult life, owned up to it. And I point to these, women who have come before all of us and say, you have to feel confident in what you are bringing to the table. You are in that room, not because you are like everyone else, but because you speak for so many people whose voices are not represented in that room. And so, we have to carry these historical women leaders' voices as part of our own history.
Oh, I agree. I love that. I love that sentiment. You're right. You're absolutely right. Because everyone matters. Everyone has a voice. Everyone matters. Lastly, is there anything else you would like to say to your constituents?
Well, similarly along those lines, whatever field you are in, and especially for the women and the young girls in our community here in Queens, again, I want to say how important it is to be proud of who you are, that you bring so much to the table, whether you're in politics and education and healthcare, whatever field you work in, or even if you're still in school. Own up to who you are, be confident, and try to use that background and that knowledge to help people who might come after you or people who are younger than you. Your voice and your validation of, the diverse array of voices that should be heard can make such a big difference as we continue to progress in this country.
Thank you, Congresswoman Meng, for joining me and taking the time for our viewers today. Thank you so much. It's much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for today's program. If you missed any part of this interview, just go to QPTV.org to view the entire show online. Just remember to celebrate the women in your life every day. #Celebrate Women's History Month all year long. I'm Roslyn, Nieves, and I'll see you next time on Queen's Perspective. Thank you so much for joining us.